You now tuned in to the Gumptown Podcast. I'm your boy Doug B. We ain't got nothing to talk about, but we got something to talk about. Let's go. Good people, good people, good people. Welcome back to the Gumptown Podcast, episode 144. I'm Doug B. If you tuned in to this podcast, thank you for your time and your attention. I really appreciate you giving it a shot. Today's guest is the founder and owner of Everyday Lead, as well as the author of Unstuck and Unstoppable. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I'm sure we will all be inspired by her story. Let's chop it up with Jeannine K. Brown. Jeannine, how's it going?
All is well, Doug. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yes, ma'am. I'm glad to hear that. And thank you for giving me a few minutes out of your time to chop it up with me on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, here to talk about Everyday Lead and all the great things you have going on in business. But before we go there, let's get to know the woman behind the brand. Born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. What was your upbringing like coming up in Milwaukee?
It was all I knew. So it was great. I'm a preacher's kid, born to in a family of four kids. I have three brothers, and it was just a regular life. Three months of summer, played in the street, played football. I mean, kickball, and ran track, played sports most of my childhood, and and went to church. That's what I did.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like you had a great time growing up in Milwaukee, and it also sounds like you had a great village around you.
I did. I was very fortunate to grow up in a community of families that looked out for each other and definitely looked out for each kid. So I grew up during a time where other people's parents could discipline you on the spot, and you went home and you got disciplined again.
Absolutely. I'm from that same era. I know things have changed, whether that's good or bad. I won't speak on that. I'll just say things are different now.
They are different.
Yes, ma'am. So that's great. You had that village, and dad was a pastor, so you were in church. So I'm pretty sure you were in Bible study, Sunday school, vacation Bible school, revival, all of it.
Yeah, we did a lot of that. But I will say, people, I think some preachers' kids and families that grow up in the church get a bad rap. We had a significant amount of independence as children. I think our parents raised us to be very independent. So we were not at church all the time, but we were definitely at church a lot. But we got a chance to, experience life. I think a wholeness of life that gave us a deeper appreciation for the freedom we have as Christians.
Good stuff, powerful stuff. You had a good time up in Milwaukee, growing up with the great village around, going to church, playing sports, doing it all. So you end up making your way down to the dirty South and attending the Alabama State University. What led you down? What led you to enroll and attend ASU?
I wish it was like this profound story, but I'm going to tell you the truth. My mom was dating someone that went to ASU, and I knew I wanted to go to an HBCU. I wanted to go to one that had a, reputable college of business. I wasn't completely sure what I was going to major in, but I knew I wanted to one day be like a business executive. And so I wanted them to have a college. And I also thought I was going to be in the Air Force. And so this guy my mom was dating was like, hey, he was in the Air Force, and he was like, oh, Alabama State has this great Air Force ROTC, one of the best in the state. They have a great campus. They have a great college of business. My mother applied. I got accepted, got a scholarship, and there I was on the bus to Montgomery.
Nice, nice. Hats off to mom for dating that gentleman that influenced you to come on down to the Gump and the Alabama State University. So upon your arrival in Montgomery, Jeannine, did you experience any culture shock?
Oh my goodness, yes. It was a lot of Black people. So I was definitely had some culture shock. So most of my life, all of my life, for the first 17 and a half years was spent in Milwaukee. My family's roots are actually in Arkansas. And so I would go down to Arkansas occasionally in the summers for family reunions, but it was just quick trips and it was just family. So I was used to that. When I got to Alabama State, I was a little overwhelmed by the culture of, like, I was excited but overwhelmed by the differences and the depth and the breadth of difference in Black people. I think all I knew were Black people in Milwaukee, and when I got to Alabama State, that first week, I knew we were all very different. Our unique stories, our unique dialects from all over the country, and even, the Caribbean, and Africa. I think that kind of, I was a little unsettled. I was like, what have I gotten myself into? But I'll tell you, it's the best experience I ever had.
Yes, ma'am. Sounds good. And I can only imagine just hearing you talk about that coming from Milwaukee, being accustomed to those type of people in Milwaukee and coming down here. And to your point, you meet people from all over, East Coast, West Coast, South, Canada, Caribbeans. And it's just really college is just a big melting pot. People from all over. You got a chance to meet. They became lifelong friends.
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting because you really don't know what you don't know when you're 17 or 18 years old. And I think the thing about college, what it gave me, was just exposure to different people's stories and the ability to share my own very unique story as a kid that was very different than my roommate that was from Gaston, Alabama. Like, we had completely different childhoods and perspectives of the world, and even the perspectives of just people, like white people and other cultures outside of Black. And so I thought that was really, I learned a lot, and it made me a better listener, and even a better storyteller.
Mm, awesome stuff. So it just sounds like HBCU experience for you was overall great.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I am a huge cheerleader and advocate for Black kids and brown kids going to historically Black colleges and universities, for undergrad. And I think and one of the biggest reasons, Doug, is I just believe, like, you never, the culture never leaves you, and you never leave the school, and you always run into someone that has that same experience, and you don't have to go back and be relegated to a black homecoming experience, or just these separate experiences from the larger university, as what I've experienced with some of my friends who went to predominantly white.
Mm, powerful, powerful stuff and spot on. So I also know that you are a product of the Dr. Percy Vaughn Jr. College of Business, aka COBA. If you know, you know. What was your experience like in COBA?
Hoba is where I really think I grew up and came into myself and was able to find my voice and really solidify, like, yeah, business is what I wanted. I think Dr. Vaughn was, I was fortunate to be able to build a relationship with him, just by disagreeing with him. I disagreed with him in his marketing class, and I raised my hand. I asked the question. He told me, he was like, "Nah, that's not right." He just kind of blew me off. You know how Dr. Vaughn was. He blew me off, and I was like, I was sitting there, and other people were talking. I raised my hand again, and he looked at me like, "Miss Brown, what?" And I was like, "I don't think I'm wrong." And I went on to explain myself, and that was the beginning of an amazing relationship and mentorship that I have with him, for a very long time.
That's so powerful, and that's so dope just to hear you talk about that because you're the first person I've heard I know of that actually challenged Dean Vaughn. Like no one challenged Dean Vaughn, and I mean, by the time I got in Cobra in 2007, he was on his way out. He was about to retire, and even just seeing him walk around the building, like people, he didn't play no games, and nobody tried him. So hats off to you for having the courage to challenge him and tell him he was wrong. That's amazing.
You know what? When you're young, and I didn't even know that I shouldn't have done that, right? Because people was like, and it was funny, Doug, because it was like everybody was looking at me like I was about to get kicked out of the room, and it was like this hush came over, like the whole room like changed. But he appreciated me using my voice, and I appreciated that. And I think that was the one thing that really helped me when I started my career.
Amazing stuff. So you go on to graduate from the Alabama State University, get your bachelor's in accounting. You go on to Georgia State University where you got your MBA. Did you go to classes on campus or did you do your classes online at Georgia State?
So I actually did my MBA almost probably over 10 years after I got my undergrad. So this was back in the day where, now a lot of students, they go right from undergrad into a graduate program. I didn't. I worked for over a decade. And I did an executive MBA program. So it was a cohort program. We had classes on Thursday and Saturday.
Okay, awesome
And I think
stuff.
it
So
was
you
like
went
alternating weeks. So I wasn't even, I think I was in class like twice a month.
nice, awesome stuff. So you were well into your career a few years, and then you went back and got your MBA. Amazing stuff. Hey, hats off to you for that large gap and actually going back. I mean, I went and got my bachelor's, and I went and got my MBA a year later. If I had waited 10 years, I'd have been like, nah, I ain't going back. So salute to you for having that courage to go back.
Well, it was interesting. And I still think I would encourage my nephew and I were talking. He's a student, an accounting student at Georgia State, and he was trying to decide should he get his MBA right away. And I encouraged him to wait. I don't know what he's going to do. He's going to decide on his own. But my advice to him was to consider waiting a few years so that you can take the actual work experience and what you're doing in the workplace into the classroom and really be able to apply that knowledge real time. Because what you learn in the classroom, you can take back to work and be able to apply it, if you're a leader and on your teams. And to me, that was the value and the bigger ROI once I finished that executive program. And then I think also the people who were in the program too, being able to listen to them, the problems that they were responsible for solving and the issues that they were faced with day to day. And so it just made for a richer conversation in our MBA program.
That's a great perspective, Jeannine. I never thought about that. Like taking that gap, that break to actually get some on the job training and experience and then taking it back to the classroom. I never thought about that. I My perspective coming out of my bachelor's was like, hey, let me go ahead and get this out the way. But no, that's a great perspective. And I think you're doing a great thing telling your nephew to get that experience and then go back to the classroom and all of it to come full circle. That makes sense.
Well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Like that's a powerful perspective. Hey, that's a powerful conversation, Jeannine. You learn something new if you have your ears wide open. So I appreciate you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So present day, you are the founder, the owner, managing director of Everyday Lead. So what products and services do you offer over at Everyday Lead?
So at Everyday Lead, we provide companies with strategies to retain talent. And we always say that we help them retain talent from interns to retirement who love what they do and where they work. And we do that through services that are focused on career and leadership development. Those could be workshops and seminars, other curated events like roundtables, focus groups. We provide outsourced executive coaching. So if companies are looking for coaches to help level up the skills and leadership abilities of their employees, they hire us to coach them. And then we also help them write strategies related to inclusion. So how can we create a more inclusive culture through the lens of psychological safety that impacts everyone in the workplace, so everybody can thrive. And so that's what I get to do. So if your company is looking for anything related to talent development or strategy, so we even help organizations and nonprofits with, like, they might have a retreat and they're trying to figure out what their strategy is going to be for the next foreseeable years. We also help them do that.
Wow, that's some powerful stuff you got going over there at Everyday Lead. Sounds like you all are making a huge impact on companies and company culture, which is vitally important because you want to build those cultures that's conducive to people being able to grow within the company and being happy and feeling included and feeling like more than a paycheck. So that's sounds like that's what you got going on at Everyday Lead, just reshaping these companies' cultures.
That's exactly right. Because, I didn't realize this, but I'm really people focused and just wanting people to have great experiences at work. I just feel like people should not have to come to work and deal with a whole lot of foolishness and toxic leadership and microaggressions and people treating you as if you are less than human. And that's anybody. We shouldn't do it to each other, to in the workplace with folks that look just like us, and it shouldn't happen to us. And so I do love what I get to do. It's not what I thought I was going to be doing, but I feel very blessed and very fortunate to do this.
Yes, ma'am. That's powerful stuff. So what exactly inspired the name Everyday Lead?
Um, I think it's two things. So the word every day, and then the shortened part of the word lead of leadership. And I always say, we wake up every morning and the first person that we have to lead is ourselves. And we have to do that every single day. And I was just sitting around thinking about that, like we self leadership and how we have to show up as leaders every day in our lives because you never know who's watching. And there it was. It was like, oh, everyday lead. Yeah, that's what I'm doing every single day. And it might look different every day. And there might be days I don't even want to do it. I joke around a little bit, Doug. It's like, this mediocre life looked pretty good out here. But in all seriousness, I think that's what we do. We actually have to make decisions every single day, and that's kind of where the name came from. So show up as a leader, but we're gonna everyday lead.
That's powerful. That's a very organic way how you came up with the name. And I'm always intrigued about company names and how they come about. And I appreciate you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
Yes, ma'am. So leading up to, so I read that you launched this company in 2011, and prior to launching the company, you had over 17 years in tax accounting and consulting. So were you working the business and doing the 9 to 5 in parallel at one point, or did you
No,
jump? Oh, go for it.
no, I wasn't. So I left public accounting. So I had been working at Deloitte and left Deloitte and went to another regional firm to help them start a practice and to grow a practice there. And so I did consulting. So a lot of the work that we were doing was helping companies with their expansions. And so say, for example, even in Alabama, I was doing this similar work when I worked in Alabama with the revenue department right out of college. I companies would look to come. So like when Boeing came to the north part of Alabama up to in the Huntsville area, we would help them get incentives to relocate to the state. And so these companies would bid against the states would be bidding against each other. So say Boeing was looking to move and open up a large operation at the time in the Southeast. And so they might have been looking at Florida, North Carolina, Alabama, and Georgia. And so when I worked for the revenue department, I would represent the state of Alabama and the revenue department with a team of other people from other state agencies. This is what we can do to help you reduce your tax liability in the state. Well, when I was at Deloitte, I did the same work, but this time I represented the company. I did very similar work. And so spent a lot of time doing that. And I really loved it. And what I realized, I tell people all the time, what you do every day might not be what you were purpose called to do or your greatest talent, but it's how you operate in that role. And so I might not have been born to help negotiate tax incentives or to do strategy and real estate work for companies. I don't believe that's what God built me and I was birthed to do. But how I did the work is what led to this new purpose in what I do at Everyday Lead. And so doing that work, I was a great leader and I was very people vested and people trusted me every day to do my work, my clients, my employees, and even in my personal life, like very strong, trusted relationships. I'm a good listener. Also really able to help people identify their own gifts and strengths and how they can use those in their work and to make money. And so what I'm doing now is very similar to what I did when I was practicing as a certified public accountant to do that work. It's how we do the work, I think, is what we're called to. It's that ability to inspire and sometimes the things that we take for granted. And I think that's what I did. I took for granted that I was a great people leader because I thought everybody was leading people in a big way. And then got called to do this other work where I still get to lead a great team, but also help other people become great leaders.
So everything you were just saying about your accounting career and how you transition and how everything in that, there's a lot of parallels in terms of what you do now. You just sound like a woman that was self-aware of your strengths, as well as you were obedient enough to understand, hey, my career, my life is making this pivot, and you trusted God and took the leap of faith to come out of that 9 to 5 world and go into business for yourself. So it's just amazing just hearing that story because you could have easily ignored those signs. You could have easily stayed where you were, which I'm pretty sure things were comfortable, things were in order, but just to have
What?
that. ma'am.
It was better than that, Doug. I was making so much money. I was making so much money that I didn't, honestly, when I say I didn't know what to do with it, I did not know what to do with it. I mean, stacking cash, and stacking cash, investing and all of these other things and planning for my retirement. Life was good. I barely bought my own food because I traveled so much. So I always ate on the company. So my income was my income. And but I knew I was like, I'm not feeling this anymore.
Mm.
Like it just I had no passion for it. I didn't want to get out the bed some days. And it wasn't because I had a bad work environment. I just lost my energy for the work. And I think, to your point, I was very fortunate, but it was a rocky road getting there. But it was a mentor of mine. And that's why I think, young people, you and even people our age, you need someone to see you, and you need to be willing to allow people to speak into your life and to show you and tell you that there's more out there for you. A lot of people feel like if someone tells you something that doesn't feel good, doesn't feel right, or is opposed to your view, is that they're not for you, that they're against you. And I was just really fortunate to have a mentor at the time who was an executive at IBM. And she's the one, Doug, that said to me, Jeannine, have you ever thought about being an executive coach? And I was like, what is that? And I didn't really know what it was. I kind of heard about it when I was at Deloitte. And she was like, you should consider that. She said, because there are people who worked for you and worked with you who still call you. And you've been away from Deloitte for X number of years. They still call you for advice about leading their teams and what they're doing. And she was like, there's something there. And I started exploring it. So I think, it's a combination of foolish ambition, misguided freedom, but also just being wrapped in a lot of support from mentors who wanted to see me win.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. And even just hearing you talk about your mentor and just your mentor seeing that strength, that value that you were bringing, and the fact that those people are still reaching out to you years later, and just you having again, the awareness and the courage to make that change. Because let's face it, Jeannine, no one likes change. Change is tough. It's scary. We like to be comfortable. Humans, myself included, we don't like to change. When it comes to anything that's gonna make us grow, make us stretch, most of the times we get right there and we say, you know what? I'm not gonna do that because I'm comfortable where I'm at. But you did it anyway, despite it being uncomfortable, despite making more money than you knew what to do with, despite all those years you had put into that 9 to 5 and into your retirement, and just having those mentors, having a mentor around you to see the greatness within you, and just being willing to listen, because that's another thing. A lot of people say they want a mentor, and then when they get that person in their corner, they only want to be told what they want to hear. They don't want to hear the truth. And it sounds like you were just willing to take counsel and actually put action behind, actually, yeah, put action behind what your mentor was telling you. Like, you didn't just say, "Yeah, I hear you," but you actually did it. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So whenever I have entrepreneurs on the platform like yourself, I like to talk about three things: the aha moment, action, and audacity. Take us back to your aha moment when you first had the idea to create Everyday Lead.
I think my biggest aha moment was that there were so many people out here impacted by bad leadership. And I think I was a little naive to how much trauma, and we weren't even using that word, over 10 or 11 years ago, but workplace trauma and how and how people's psychological safety was impacted in the workplace. But I knew what I wanted to do was to inspire. And so I think my biggest aha was that is that I could bring, you know, my belief system, my faith, and my belief that good leaders can inspire and expand the capacity of their staff. And I just needed to figure out how to do that. And then what I realized is I have to do that by being my authentic self. So if it's, being a little bit laid back and jokey, but sometimes really intense, or, bringing fun to the work, is that if I show up and be my best self, but actually be my most authentic self, the person that I'm most comfortable being with my friends, Right. So if I can bring the person that my friends experienced into the work with our clients, we can have great transformation. And that's exactly what. And so when I got to that point where I stopped trying to pretend to be some sort of ideal of what a CEO was, and I just came in and I was just Jeannine K. Brown, the work just got so much easier and more enjoyable.
Makes sense. Powerful stuff. Just being your authentic self. Just realizing there were a lot of company cultures out here, a lot of people going through that workplace trauma. So that was your aha moment. So from the time you had that realization, the aha moment, how long did it take you to take action to come up with a name and actually get started in business?
So the company that I'm working in now, the name is very different. The company, our services, our motto, our website. So I think the thing that I want to encourage entrepreneurs to know is that it's an evolution. And so this is the third company name and the last for this business. But yeah, we changed the name, the logo, the colors, all the things, Doug, over in this, since 2011, even what we were the services that we were offering, the types of companies we were doing, the products that we offered our clients. So it's been an evolution, and I think that's what business is. We've had moments where we've had some windfalls and some big wins around clients and the size of the client, the size of the engagement, the amount of revenue we were bringing in a month. And then we've had some really, really, really bad dry days. Unfortunately, we've had to let people go and contracts were not being signed, especially during the pandemic, and contracts were not being signed, and or companies were, deciding they didn't want to work with us. We lost the work, being able to get the work to a competitor. Even most recently, I have a client right now that is closing their doors, a big company in the movie production industry based in California. So I think, I would say a lot of this is just an evolution. And every day there's a new challenge, a new something that I realize I don't know. But I think it's the tenacity to stay and stick with it. Because I don't even know if I'm employable. Like, who want to hire me? So I got to stay here and, be tenacious and embrace the evolution of the work.
Powerful stuff. And I appreciate you for being transparent and sharing that. You not only touched on the highlights of the business, you also touched on the not so highlights of the business, like the things that losing contracts and having to lay off employees and dealing with the pandemic. And the reason why I appreciate that, Jeannine, is because looking on social media at times, a lot of entrepreneurs make entrepreneurship look flawless. Like it's so you wake up in the morning, you check your account, and zeros just rolling in. But what you just broke down is just a realistic day in the life of an entrepreneur. You have great months, you have months that are not so great. And I'm not a full time entrepreneur. I still work a 9 to 5, but that message you just dropped, that gems you just dropped was just very powerful for me and anyone who's out there listening. Thank you for being transparent and sharing that.
No, my pleasure. I am nothing but honest. Like probably foolishly honest and transparent. But I think you hit on it though, Doug. People are on TikTok and the gram and they're showing they posted up with, nice clothes on and leaning up against luxury vehicles. And all of that is fine. I will not disparage that if that's what you want. But sometimes they don't even know how they're going to put gas in that vehicle. And the work is hard. And I don't care if you have a $40 million business or $110 million business. If you are, or if you just start and you're trying to get to your first 6 figures, it's hard and it can be lonely at times. It's frustrating. Most people don't understand what you do or why. And then I think a lot of people expect their friends and family to be their primary customers, and then they get disappointed when they feel like people don't support them. And so it's tough. You have to have a lot. You have to work on your mindset for real. Like every day is an opportunity to strengthen how you think about money, relationships, clients, business, being an employer, and the list that goes on to do this work.
Yes, ma'am. Powerful stuff. That last portion, audacity, is one thing to have an idea, an aha moment, and to put action behind that idea. But to put it out to the world to be praised or criticized, that's where the audacity comes in my opinion. Who or what gave you that courage, that audacity to put everyday lead out to the world?
That's a good question. I think the support from my family. None of my brother, only one of my brothers works for a company. We all are independent in some way. So I have a brother that is in the music industry and a DJ. Um, and so he's kind of made a living doing that, and he's, written music for other artists at one time. And then I have another brother who's a speaker. And I think just my mom, once my mother understood that her children were going to just kind of do things non-traditionally and she stopped worrying, I think that increased my audacity. And I think that's because she was like our foundation. And so having her as the foundation, and when your mom is good and that, and she's not worrying anymore, and she recognizes that, we're going to do things a little bit differently, then I think it gave me the strength to kind of do it, because I knew that she would be there. She's a safe place to land for all of us. Because I was really young then. And so I think that was part of it. And I think knowing that you have a safe place to go and someone to talk to, and even if they don't really even understand what you're doing, because a lot of times our parents don't always get it, but I think that was one of them, the audacity. And then I think having the second layer of that is just having another community. So I've been really fortunate that a lot of our largest clients are relationships that I had before I started this business. I didn't know they were going to be my clients. But when I started telling people, hey, I'm starting this leadership firm, they were like not surprised. They were almost like, oh, it's about time. And so I don't know if I had as much audacity as I think I had, but I think I've had the audacity to stick with it through good times and bad times, not to go take a job and, not to go become a big leader in a corporation. I think I've had the audacity to stay.
That's amazing. And just hearing you talk about your family and just that community of people professionally, it goes back to what I was talking about early on, Jeannine. Just talks that village. It takes a village at all levels, when we are children and when we're adults. And it just sounds like your village gave you that audacity, that encouragement to do what you're doing right now.
They did. They did. And I've been really fortunate. And then can I throw one more thing in there, Doug?
Yes, ma'am.
I think watching, we have some amazing people that went to Alabama.
Sure.
And yeah, and I think connecting with people that I know and I only know because they went to ASU. So maybe we weren't on campus at the same time, or we weren't on the yard at the same time. But I've met them since, even if I just met them on social media, or I see something about them, or I see someone else post about something amazing that someone went to state and did. I think that also kind of fuels you to take a risk and to do some different things. And so I think just like people who find out about, Gumtown podcast, they're like, well, I probably could do something like that. Right. Doug is doing this. Maybe I could try to get my voice out there. Or maybe if I don't want to speak, I'll write, or I'll do something, take a risk. I can still work my full-time gig, but I can also do something else. And I think being in a community of, all of these past graduates, and watching how people are living in the world, I think there's also an inspiration.
1000%. I agree wholeheartedly. And that's what you just said about great people going to ASU. That's exactly why I love going back to homecoming and Turkey Day Classic and just reconnecting with people and just find out what they're doing. And it is inspirational because you find out, hey, Jeannine has her own business. She's an executive coach. Or Joe Blow, he's a personal trainer. And it's just so cool just hearing everybody doing their thing. And to your point, it is inspirational. It's not one of those things where it's competition. It's like, man, like they out there crushing, killing the game. So why not me go for whatever it is I want to do? And I don't have to necessarily leave my job, but I can do my 9 to 5 and do my side gig like you were just saying. So that was spot on. Appreciate that, ma'am. So take us back to your very first client, paid client with Everyday Lead. No need to mention the client name. Just take us back to that experience overall.
So I'll share my first, let's see, 5-figure. I had to look at my fingers, see how many zeros. My first big 5-figure client. So over $10,000 that we billed. it was actually someone who reached out to me that I know. We'd never worked together, but we knew each other through a professional association. And so that was probably the first time we had an engagement that was more than $5,000 or 6,500, 8,900. Right? We were like over $10,000. And we designed a program for them, a women's program. They were in the banking industry in the Midwest. And it was the first time. And I was still pretty much by myself. So this was really early on in the business. I didn't have any employees. I had a couple of contractors that we that I worked with. And so it wasn't, when I look back at that product, and I did just look at it recently, and I look what we're producing now, completely different work. Right? Just the quality. There are no typos or errors in the work. Like when you're by yourself, you tend to don't catch all your mistakes, and there are things that you just hope that the client will forgive you for and not hold against you. But the people had a great experience. They loved the content. I felt really good about it. I was inspired by the possibilities just doing that with the first client. And that's what I hope the first client does for a lot of people. Like that first client that you remember that got you to the point where you say, you know what, I can do this for a very long time, and you bring it in that revenue number, and it's the biggest engagement you ever sold. And so that's kind of the experience I had with that one. But what I remember the most is just kind of looking back. When I look at what we create now, and what our products and services look like, how I sell, how fast, like we can close deals much faster now, is really what inspires me. And I can say, ooh, we've come a long way.
Yes, ma'am. That's great. Just hearing you talk about that first five-figure client and just hearing you talk about the evolution of the business. So it just sounds like y'all documented things y'all were doing back then so y'all could continually evolve, because you have to have those standard operating procedures in place and you got to take notes and document. So it sounds like you did a great job keeping up with the things, keeping those notes handy, like the BA taught you.
Yeah, we definitely getting them deliverables. So final product deliverables done.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So, what are some cities Everyday Lead has uh, blessed you with the opportunity to travel to and work with clients?
So we have clients all over the country, except for maybe Montana, Iowa. We don't stuff like that, Rhode Island. But we've worked with companies all over, or either if it hasn't taken us to that state, they might have employees there. So a lot of our clients are global companies. They fit somewhere maybe on the Fortune, like largest 1,000 companies in America. We work with some municipalities, some privately owned companies that might be partnerships like accounting firms, law firms. So we do a lot of work in the professional services space because I came out of there, and a lot of my relationships are with companies like that. So they're LLCs and partnerships. But we also do work with the motion picture industry, manufacturing, construction, fintech, and things like that. So but we've been everywhere. I think one of my favorite cities to visit for work is Seattle. It's because I have some great friends out there. I love going to Chicago and New York for work. I was just recently in Florida. I have a client down there that we do some work with and have some good relationships with. So I get to go to some pretty cool places, big cities. Not like when I worked for the revenue department in Alabama and I was going to all these small towns, and sometimes we get stopped in the road by cows and chickens and stuff like that. So I haven't had a roadblock of cows and chickens in decades, but so that's the difference between the two.
Yes, ma'am. That's amazing. I appreciate you for sharing some of those cities you love to travel to. I've heard great things about Seattle. Haven't made it out there yet, but yeah, Seattle. So, isn't that the home of the very first Starbucks?
That is, and it is down by the I don't know if they call that area like a waterfront area. It's like right on the water. But yeah, it is the home of that. So if you go, it's tricky because it sits in a cool place, like cool, like weather cool compared to being in the South. So it can be kind of cold there. during times that you expect for it to be warm. So if you ever plan a trip, look on the weather and say, okay, when's the warmest time to come? Because when it's warm, it is so beautiful because you see water, you see mountains, you see all the green plush areas. So it is, and I think that's why I like the city. You can just, it has so much from a topography standpoint that you just get to see all of these beautiful creations in the earth.
Mm. That's amazing. That is amazing stuff. So you had a chance to travel and continue to rock and roll and rack up those clients. I also read that you are an author. You wrote this book, Ignite Your Best Year Ever, Achieve More and Exceed Your Potential. So let's talk about that process. How long did it take you to write that book from cover to cover?
So I'm gonna do two things, Doug. So that book was a ebook that I wrote years ago before people were doing ebooks. And so I wrote that book and it was free. And then in 2021, actually during the pandemic, actually before the pandemic, I was like, oh, I'm gonna write a book and I'm gonna write a real book, sell it on Amazon and other booksellers. And my mom got sick and I kind of forgot, right, that I was writing this book. But when the pandemic happened and we were all sitting around at home, it's like I was writing a book. And so I actually wrote another book called Unstuck and Unstoppable: 5 Proven Strategies to Leverage Your Value, Increase Your Visibility, and Gain Recognition to Accelerate Your Career. So it's a career book. You can find it on Amazon or on our website. And that process was the hardest thing I've ever done. Writing a real tangible book for sale. Now, when you talk about audacity and what gave me audacity, because you're going to be judged, I was so afraid to release this book. It was pretty much done, and I was procrastinating on proofreading, on reading the stuff the editor was sending me. Like, say they sent me something in June, I was supposed to turn it back in 2 weeks. I didn't get it back to them until the end of July. And then I realized, what am I doing? Like, it was almost like I was sabotaging the process and delaying the process. And it was all about being vulnerable and transparent and afraid that I was going to be judged by people in the internet streets, including people that I knew. Like, what if they got the book and the editor and the proofreader missed something and there's a typo in it, or there's a word wrong, or there's something. And so I was like terrified to release this book. But the process of writing it was fulfilling and it was extremely challenging. But I had an amazing team with the publisher, and I didn't have to do much. They did a lot of the work to help me make sure that it was a great product. And the book was voted in 2022 as one of the best career books of the year in Canada and North America. I'm in North America, so in Canada and the US. And so that was pretty exciting.
Mm. That's amazing, and hats off to you for persevering and making it through that process and it. And that's what it's all about, Jeannine. Just pivoting and just stepping out there and having that audacity, which you displayed multiple times, just hearing your story. So unstuck and unstoppable. What inspired that name?
I actually wanted to name the book something else. And this is where I always say back to the mentors and having people in your life. We actually did a focus group of some past clients, some people that I did not know. And the past clients came up with this idea. It was like, when I work with you, I just feel like I'm unstuck and then I can do anything. And that was like a reoccurring theme from our clients who were being interviewed about their working with me. Like, when they worked with me, what was that experience like? How were you when you first came into your coaching experiences, or when you started this leadership program that was designed by Everyday Lead? And they would always say that, like, I felt stuck in my career, but I wanted to be unstoppable. I wanted to have the skills or the knowledge that nothing would slow me down, kind of thing. And so we came up with that and like 5 other titles. And Unstuck and Unstoppable got over 90% of the votes. And the title that I wanted got like 0 votes. So, if you're writing a book, or I think if you're doing anything big, it's okay to get some feedback, educated feedback, right? So a focus group that doesn't know you, a focus group that has experienced you, not just your cousins and them, but so that so that you can get some. And then the title and then the graphic designer who designed the cover with the title and the cover, it was just like magic. And people are drawn to the book. And we sell hundreds of books to corporations. And and so that's how it's worked.
Okay, that's awesome stuff. And to your point, just having people around you that can offer constructive criticism, and also to your point, yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily want your cousin. I mean, we love family, but they've never done this type of thing. Yeah, their advice probably isn't the best at the time. So, hats off to you for getting around people, been there, done that, who could provide you with the constructive criticism, and also being willing to accept the title that had the most votes, because you could have easily said, forget that. I'm gonna name the book what I want to name it, and who knows, that may or may not have had an impact on how it sold or if the title stuck out, because Unstuck and Unstoppable, that's a title that would stop me in my tracks. Like if I was walking in Books a Million and I saw that, it would stop me. It catches the eye. So hats off to your Think Group for encouraging you to name it that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because my title was, I get it, and it's about, like you said, it would stop you in your tracks. And my title was not going to stop people in their tracks. It probably would have made them ask questions and not really understand what it was about. And I think, as authors, even my business names, I tell people be really clear about why you are naming your business that. Because if you're naming it, and it's these 6 letters that belong to your children, your best friend, and your favorite cousin, and it doesn't stick, like people, it don't stick with them. It doesn't tell the story of what you're trying to impact and how you're trying to impact them, or you got to keep explaining it, then that means, people are not getting your vision.
Absolutely, 1000%. And the cool thing about it is, I have a feeling that whatever that title name was, I have a feeling you're going to repurpose and use it down the line in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
I don't even know if I remember what it is, Doug. I don't know if I remember what it was, but
Hey,
I'm
it's
sure if I
all
go back
good.
to my notes, I can find
Yes,
it.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Amazing stuff. That's great. Just hearing book, how you came up with the name, and just overall great reception that you had about the book. You said something earlier about just being afraid about putting it out in these internet streets, and trust me, I understand wholeheartedly, because the internet can be a cruel place and people can dogpile on you and talk crap about you, and they may not even know you. They just want to be the first to say, "Hey, this book is trash. This podcast is trash." And despite having those fears, you put it out anyway. And I'm pretty sure the reception has been great. And like you just talking about corporations buying your books. And so in the end, I'm pretty sure you have no regrets about putting out the book. That's what I'm getting to.
Not one.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. Just doing it anyway, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So you've done great things as an entrepreneur and author, Jeannine, and I know great things are coming down the pipeline, which leads to my next portion, vision. What are some of your short-term and long-term goals in this entrepreneurial space you feel comfortable sharing?
I think one of our long-term goals, we actually started it, was doing some live events in the business community. We launched one here in Atlanta for women, an executive women's roundtable, just bringing executive women who are at the chief level or at least 1 or 2 levels down from their CEO, their chief of their division, and just having a place for them to have conversations. So just doing more live events that our clients are not paying us to come to their companies to do, because what I recognize is when we bring people together from different industries and different companies, the conversation is so rich. And so that's one of my long-term goals. The next goal is just to continue to grow and scale the business. It's scary sometimes to say that, we have a goal to get to a higher number in the millions, like just to even throw out and say, we want to build a $10 million company that employs, 25 to 30 people or more. It's really scary because if it is huge, and what if I don't do it, and all the what ifs. But that's a goal that I have. And then the other one I would say is I have another book that's based off of the podcast that I have, and just being able to write that, making time to be able to write that book, or hiring somebody to work with to help write that book, is my third big business goal.
Okay, awesome stuff. Those are great goals, both short-term and long-term, and I have no doubt you'll make them all come to fruition.
Oops. Yeah, bro.
Yes, ma'am, no doubt. So let's talk a little bit more about what you're doing in the podcasting space with Before 30. What inspired you to come into this podcasting space?
So, Before 30's podcast was just a passion project after spending some time with one of my nieces, and it was before she turned 30. And I realized that, like, we were talking about setting goals and different things, and she had never done that before. And I was like, how are you related to me? And, part of our family, and you've never had this experience of setting goals and writing out your intentions and understanding what affirmations are and how they impact your life, and just all of these things. She didn't know how to do that, and she was trying to figure out what was her purpose in life. And she was struggling between like her career and just didn't know what she wanted to do, but she was a great student. And I recognized from there like how I want to be able to tap into her, because if she doesn't know this, and I spend a lot of time setting goals, and so does her dad, how many other people before the age of 30 don't? So we came up with this idea to create this program called Before 30. And we've transitioned it from the podcast to actually a service line within Everyday Lead, where we focus on helping college students and young professionals get on the path of finding purpose before their 30th birthday. And we write leadership programs and things for people under the age of 30 that's working or in school. And then I have another podcast that is currently live that's called The Untoxic Boss. And that's the project we do, directly tied to the work we do at Everyday Lead, and helping companies create culture that is psychologically safe, where everyone can thrive. And so I get a chance to help people stop being a jerk at work by doing the Untoxic Boss podcast. And we do that every week, just like you. We drop a show every Tuesday.
That's amazing. So you're just around here just spreading your impact all over the world. You rocking and rolling with the business everyday lead. You got the pot you in the podcasting space kicking butt. You an author. You doing it all. You like a real deal Renaissance woman. That's amazing.
Well, I haven't heard that word in a long time, but
Oh, I
thank
hope
you.
okay. I hope it wasn't offensive. My apologies if it
No,
was.
no,
Oh,
no, no. I like it as a term. But a lot of people are not aware of what it means and how to use it like that. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So, Jeannine, as we wrap up the podcast, I want to ask the $1 million question. I started this podcast to highlight the greatness connected to the city of Montgomery, whether you're from here or lived here for a period of your life, be it college, military, or work. You being in Montgomery to attend and graduate from the Alabama State University. I want to ask you, what do you appreciate the most about your time in Montgomery?
I learned in Montgomery how to build community. Although I said in my childhood, I grew up around these families, and I lived in community. I think as an adult, I living in Montgomery, I understood community, especially when I got my own place and people stopped by and I started making friends and inviting people over. I think I love, and I still do, because when I come back to Montgomery, which is pretty often, but when I do come back, I'm always invited to someone's house to eat, right? Breakfast, or stop by, we cooking dinner, or even if I'm there for a football game, if I'm there for Turkey Day Classic, because people know, hey, Jeannine's in town, Turkey Day Classic, she has no family and no, blood family in Atlanta. So she got the Hornets. And I'll have all these invitations to go eat Thanksgiving dinner with people after the game. And so I think it's that community that that I brought to Atlanta with me, and I still try to create, and with people of all ages, and just bringing people together, creating community. And I also still believe in just picking up the phone and calling people instead of texting, can you talk, or just holding a whole dialogue by text, was driving me bananas. I hate doing that. But yeah, so that's me. My neighbors and I, we'll just walk over to each other's house, ring the doorbell through the back door, right? Walk across the yard through the back door. And so I think that's the thing that Montgomery gave me, is that the bigger love and sense of building community and creating my own family through friendships.
Powerful stuff. So, how can people connect with you, Jeannine? What are your social media handles and website?
So my name is Jeannine K. Brown everywhere. So from LinkedIn all the way to the gram on TikTok, you can find us under the Untoxic Boss. but you can hit me up any place there. I read my own emails. And even if you slide in my DMs, I respond to them like I did with you, Doug. So yeah, that's how they can find me. They can find our website. We are at everyday-lead.com. So if you want to work with us to help your organization create safe spaces for everyone to thrive, you can hit us up on there and schedule a call to meet with me or someone on our team that would love to help you create better leaders in the workplace.
Yes, ma'am. And of course, I'll put all of that information in the description of the episode. Hey, Jeannine, thanks again for the conversation. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for what you're doing to shine this spotlight on Montgomery and people who either still live there or who were impacted by being in Montgomery or in Alabama. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. People, that concludes another dope episode of the Gumptown Podcast. In the meantime, in between time, y'all know what to do. Be blessed, be safe, but most importantly, have the audacity to be you. Gone. Thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate your time and your attention. Until next time.